Good evening. I'm Mark Doff, Curator of History here at Gilcrease Museum. Welcome to our latest presentation of Gilcrease Inside Out. Before we begin our program, I want to give a quick shout out and a big thank you to two people working behind the scenes who make all the magic happen so that we can actually have programs like tonight's. They are Leslie Bonaventura and our Associate Director of Development, and Blake Howard, the museum's Membership Services Coordinator. Thank you, Leslie and Blake. As well, thanks to all of you, our Gilcrease members, for your support of our museum. We truly appreciate you. As you can see, the subject for tonight's program is our exhibition, Assignment Tulsa. And to help me, I've invited 4 of the photographers featured in the exhibition to join me. And just like all of you, they are Gilcrease Museum members. My special guests tonight are Kathy DeRusso, Anitra Labenhar, Cindy McKinney, and Dave Muller. Thanks to each of you for taking time to help me with our program this evening. Here shortly, Anitra, Cindy, Dave, and Kathy will be sharing their thoughts on the inspiration for their subjects and the challenges of getting the shots that resulted in their photographs being selected for the exhibition Assignment Tulsa. But before we launch into our program, just a reminder that we welcome and encourage your questions. Please ask whatever comes to mind and use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and type in your questions. We will do our best to answer as many as possible at the end of our program. Now, before Cindy, Anitra, Dave, and Kathy discuss their works, I want to quickly review what Assignment Tulsa is all about. Assignment Tulsa is a community-based exhibition of photography. All of the photographs in the exhibition, the 49 photographs, were taken by folks that live in and around Tulsa. It's a collaboration between Gilcrease Museum and Photog, the Photographers of Tulsa, Oklahoma group. It's an exhibition showcasing the many things that make Tulsa special and endlessly interesting. It's also visual evidence of the skill and creativity of the Photog members who participated, many of whom are also Gilcrease Museum members, just like all of you. And in fact, this weekend, I was going through the photographs. There's 49 in the exhibition. Over 40% of the photographs in the exhibition were taken by not only Photog members, but Gilcrease Museum members. And I think that says a whole lot about the creativity within our membership here at Gilcrease Museum. Assignment Tulsa is a concept developed in late 2019. It was launched in July of 2020. It's a judged 5-month contest, and the actual exhibition opened in March of 2021. The overarching subject for Assignment Tulsa is Tulsa, the essence of Tulsa, broadly defined. And each of the 5 months that took place this past year had a specific theme. Beginning in July, the theme was Tulsa buildings. And so to give you an idea of how the contest worked, in July, a Photog member between July 1st and the 31st would go out and choose their subject. It had to be a building broadly defined. They would take their photographs and they had to enter that photograph by the end of the month. And then the same thing took place in August with Tulsa icons, September, Tulsa parks, October, Tulsa people, and November, the final month of the contest, was open. There wasn't a specific subject. As long as the photograph had something to do with Tulsa, then it was eligible for entry. July being the first month, Tulsa buildings was the theme, was the assignment of the month. And if you think back to what was happening in July of last year, you recall that the racial justice, social justice protests were taking place not only around the country, but right here in Tulsa. And one of those photographs is what you see on the screen by Gilcrease Museum member Bill Ramsey. Bill couldn't join us tonight. He's actually out taking photographs for one of his clients. And with that, I'm sorry, I've got an overly active finger on my mouse. I'm going to start with Kathy DeRusso and ask her to talk about her work, her winning photograph for July Reflections. Kathy.
Thank you, Mark. And also thank you to the staff at Gilcrease for extending this opportunity to the Photographers of Tulsa, Oklahoma group. It's really an honor to be part of this exhibition. And I really appreciate the fact that Gilcrease places such an importance on local art. So buildings, we have many, almost too many to choose from when you're a photographer. I walked the pavement and took lots and lots of photos, but it just didn't seem right until I got to the corner of 2nd and Boulder. And so standing there, I was really impressed with the initial view. So what I'm looking at and standing beside is the newer glass buildings of the Williams Towers, and following the lines and the reflection, it takes me straight into the past with the historical buildings that have been there for decades that contain lots and lots of our history. Excuse me, reflections and leading lines are really one of the favorite parts of my photography, I think, and something that I really look for when I'm taking pictures. And this, of course, was no exception, being able to stand here. And we had a nice sky that day. So between the reflections in the glass of the sky and the buildings and the leading lines, it just was the picture that I was looking for. And so that was how I selected this one to submit.
Well, your leading line draws us immediately into the photograph, Kathy. And as with all of the works that I saw as one of the judges over the course of the exhibition, the contest, I learned so much each month in looking at these on how to take better photographs for myself. So thank you. Our next photograph is by Anitra Lavenhar. And I'll share something before Anitra gets started. When we developed the idea, the concept, I was only a little bit leery about doing an exhibition as a curator, doing an exhibition with a group of people I really didn't know. I knew Kathy and I knew Bill Ramsey. You saw his photograph earlier. But when the photographs for July came in for judging, all of my apprehensions disappeared. They were fabulous. And this is a great example, Anitra, parking garage shadows. If you would, share your thoughts with us on this photograph.
Thank you, Mark. So this was a risk that I took with this photograph. I had actually gone downtown and was photographing all the beautiful buildings we have downtown. I love all the Art Deco and history that's there in the architecture. I love reflections, so I too had taken a number of reflection photos. And I was on my way home, and out of the corner of my eye, just saw this kind of late afternoon sun going across the parking garage there. And so definitely not one of our beautiful buildings in Tulsa, but to me, the contrast, the shadow, the line, the form, the geometry of the picture really struck me. And I got it kind of a kick out of the fact that it was next to all these other really nice, pretty buildings, and then there was the parking garage. So I was proud of this picture being selected.
Well, and again, as I mentioned, after seeing the first month's photographs, and there were over 50 photographs entered, only 9 of them ended up being judged winners, but that's only because we had room on the walls for 9 for July. But a photograph like this confirmed in my mind that yes, we're onto something with this concept, and photographers like Anitra were willing to take a chance on something that most of us would never think of being worthy of as a subject for a contest like this. Thank you, Anitra. Next is this work by Cindy McKinney. Cindy.
Thank you, Mark. So I wandered around downtown Tulsa a lot too, and I'm always attracted to reflections. And I was taking more traditional, maybe pictures of buildings. And it was early one morning, and I just happened to look up, and this was the BOK reflected in the building next door. And so that just caught my eye. I just liked the symmetry of it. Anyway, so that's kind of how. But you know, you don't always look up and take pictures. So this was just kind of a different perspective, I guess, for me. And it's different leading lines too, because it kind of takes you into that pretty sky. So
yes. Well, and like Kathy's photo of the same month, you also have similar titles. Hers is Reflections, yours is Towering Reflections. It's the perspective that you have, where with Kathy's, we're looking into this group of buildings. Yours, we're between them and looking skyward, which I think is really, really neat. In fact, when this came back from the framers, they had actually, because they didn't have your insight, they weren't sure which direction was up. So I said, imagine you're laying on the ground, and they got it.
okay, there you go.
Thank you. Our subject for August was Tulsa icons. And as you'll see in a moment, many of those icons are beloved images around Tulsa that have been around for a long time. I chose this image for the month break here because Buck Adams is a relatively new icon, Tulsa icon, at least according to the photographers within Photog. And I think this image really captures the time and place that the exhibition contest took place. This sits near the corner of Peoria and 11th at the Route 66 Cosmic Curio Shop. You'll see more on that later. But the mask that Buck Adams is wearing clearly indicates that the contest took place during a global pandemic. And that may be something we want to talk about a little bit more as we get into the program. Well, Anitra, your work, Horseman, was one of the winners in August. Tell us about your inspiration and any challenges you may have had.
Yeah, actually, I think my biggest challenge was that the theme itself did not really excite me, honestly. I found it, you know, icons tend to be over photographed to begin with. So I really was like wondering how I would get a unique and interesting picture of something that is something that people tend to take a lot of pictures of. So I love this statue. It's in one of our beautiful parks here. I've always found it to be a very emotional statue. And this picture is definitely, to me, about the power of perspective. Obviously, if I just moved a few inches, you would see a very different view of this sculpture. And I was just playing around with moving myself and seeing what happened in the lens. And I love that about photography, that it's actually like a art of subtraction in a way, of like figuring out what are you going to have in your frame and what are you not going to have in your frame. So this particular vantage point blended the two, the horse and the man. And I also thought that was kind of neat because it reflected to me that Native American spirituality of us all being one with, you know, animals and nature. So again, super pleased that this one was chosen. You never know when you go to submit your picture, but.
Well, and I think that goes back to the photographers willing to take a chance. I mean, on the one hand, you're entering a photograph and you're wanting it to win a contest. And so it's that balance between taking a chance and presenting something in a very unique way. But if it's too unique, the judges may say, that's too much. And I think you mentioned photography is the art of reduction or abstraction, that here less is definitely more, I think. Thank you. And then Cindy, this image of yours from Tulsa Icons, we've used as a museum as part of our branding of the exhibition. In fact, Clark Weems of Circle Cinema loves this so much, I'm sure he's going to contact you and ask if you can get a copy. So tell us about it.
Okay, so again, with icons, I mean, I went around Tulsa, you know, the Tulsa Driller. I was kind of like Anitra. I didn't, at first, I was like, oh, what am I going to do? But then I thought of the Circle Cinema because I've always liked the theater. And when I saw the stay safe message for Tulsa wearing masks, again, that was just evidence of the pandemic. And it was funny because I'll tell you, the day after this, it said, "Happy birthday, Harry." So it was just a neat, you know, timing that I got that message on the marquee. And then we call it light painting as photographers. It's really just light in motion when you have a long, like a moving light, when you have a long shutter speed. So I was taking pictures trying to get cars and vehicles moving by, and those were neat. And I've been out there, you know, and as a photographer, I think we always want to take one more picture, one more picture. It's hard to stop. You always want to get the one better one. Well, I was getting ready to pack up, and I don't know, something made me stay a minute more. And then I heard a fire truck. So I was very fortunate, and I've credited the Tulsa Fire Department. So that's why the lights go top to bottom, because a huge Tulsa fire truck went roaring by with its lights on. So they helped me with light painting for this one.
Well, you know, sometimes being lucky is as good as being good. And I think this photograph is a great example of that. For those of you that are skilled photographers, there's a lot of skill involved in getting the shot that Cindy did. But as she would be the first to tell you, she also got really lucky that the fire truck was coming by and she was able to get this. And again, the fact that this was taken at a time, we look at the marquee and we know exactly the time and place that this shot was made. Well, September was Tulsa Parks, and another one of Bill Ramsey's work, Lights On at the Boathouse, was actually the overall winner for the month of September. And for those of you that have visited the museum, you've seen the exhibition, or you're planning as a result of tonight's program to come out and see the exhibition before it closes end of day, July 4th. If you see of the 5 subjects, the larger images, the large framed images, they are the overall winners that month. And this was the overall winner for September. And then the other images, they're large, but they're not quite as large as the overall winner each month. So I think Bill could have entered this in Tulsa Icons. This image has become iconic. But now, Dave, I want to bring you into the program with this beautiful photograph of the monarch butterfly, Freedom in the Garden. Tell us about it.
Well, Parks was a perfect activity for the COVID era. And in addition to being a member at the Gilcrease, I'm a member at the Philbrook, and I spent many quiet, alone morning in the garden during COVID. And so as September rolled around, that's about the time monarchs in numbers appear on their annual migration. And I often shoot the world with a very long lens, bringing things up close, but I backed off and shot this at about 100 millimeters intentionally with a small aperture to give a little bit broader depth of focus. And I watched this butterfly dancing amidst the flowers in the butterfly garden at the Philbrook. And I wanted to give a sense of place. So those are fairly recognizable windows at the Philbrook. This is a fast shutter speed to freeze the butterfly. And I really enjoyed the theme of parks, and glad to share this image with you from my quiet time in the garden.
Well, thank you, Dave. One of the things that as a judge, looking back, when I now see Dave's work, is the just brilliant colors that his photographs have within them. If you look at Dave's background tonight, you see a shot from Antarctica, and the brilliant colors and the extremely sharp focus that he has in the foreground. And because of that shorter lens length, he has the background a little bit blurry, but you still see, you know, where you are in this photograph. And you'll see another one of Dave's works here in a moment, and see if you don't see those same qualities. The other thing I want to mention, and Dave's description that he just gave was so good, it's almost like poetry. And if you come out to the exhibition, you see the photographs, but each of the photographers wrote a description of their work. And Dave's, Cindy's, Anitra's, Kathy's, all of their descriptions take you to another layer or level of the photograph. The photographs, their emotional impact is the first thing that really grabs your attention. But then be sure to read the descriptions that each of these have, because it is like peeling back the layers of an onion. You learn about Cindy's photograph there of the circle, or as Dave mentions here at the Philbrook Gardens. Thank you, Dave. And one of the most popular venues throughout the contest, whether it was parks or icons or anything else, was the Gathering Place, the new park here in Tulsa. I think of the winning entries in the parks, 3 of them were taken at the Gathering Place, as Anitra Lavenhar's Catching Air was. Anitra, tell us about this.
Well, I guess what makes parks most interesting to me are the people in them. And this skate park, I've just loved going there and photographing the people doing the amazing tricks and kind of catching them in with those fast shutter speeds and watching them do these things that are just amazing to me. So I knew I wanted to capture people in action in the parks. And this, when I was photographing in the skate park here, I remember I had to lie down on my belly to get the shot. And I'm sure there are some people looking around like, what is that lady doing over there? But I think that it is a popular place for photographers, so they probably don't think too much of that. Anyway, I really love that leading line. It's a curved line, but how it leads you to the subject. And again, you'll see my love of geometry and line and form in this capture. I did choose to process it in black and white because I really just wanted that to stand out, the line and the form. But a funny backstory with this is that it turns out I actually know the person that I was photographing there. I didn't know that at the time, but just after I took the photograph, I looked up over the path and there was a friend of mine, and she said, "Oh, that's my son on the scooter." So it turns out she was able to purchase the picture from me and give it to her son for Christmas. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you, Anitra. And you made the point that you, after taking this photograph, you processed it into black and white. And many of the photographs in Assignment Tulsa, the 49 photographs, many of them are black and white. And I've thought about this photograph a lot. I went to the Gathering Place and I probably laid on the ground trying to figure out how you got this shot. And I don't think it would work in color nearly so well as it does in black and white. And I would also say to all of you that want to come out and see the exhibition, that we will be closed, or not the museum. Let me back up. I'm sorry. Assignment Tulsa will be closed tomorrow and Thursday because of a special event that we have here tomorrow night and Thursday. So if you're planning only to come to see Assignment Tulsa, and that's certainly a great reason to come out to the museum, it will be closed tomorrow and Thursday. Museum's open, but Assignment Tulsa won't be available. Thank you, Anitra. October, the theme was Tulsa People. And over time, I think personally, this has become my favorite of the 5 months the favorite theme of the 5 months. I love them all, but if I had to choose only one, it's Tulsa People. And the overall winner for the month of October, Tulsa People, was Gilcrease Museum member Bill Oswald, and this wonderful photograph of his his grandson exploring grandma's magic globe. Again, it's in black and white. And if you look closely, the young boy is looking at a snow globe, and it's actually downtown Tulsa. How cool is that? What a great subject for Tulsa People. And in Bill's description of this work, he ends the description with something that really appealed to me. He notes that this child is captivated with something you don't have to plug in the wall, you don't have to put batteries in, and you don't have to have an internet connection to enjoy. Is that great or what? Well, Kathy, your photograph, Fierce Female Firefighter, may be one of my favorites of the entire exhibition. I think this is one of the most powerful images in the show. Tell us about her.
Well, I love this picture. And quite honestly, when I look at it, I'm amazed that I'm the one that took it. I almost skipped the People Month because people photography really is not my thing at all. And it is way out of my comfort zone. So when I decided, okay, I'm going to do this, I contacted my friend, her name is Alexa, and she agreed to let me come take her picture. So I went to Station 20, where she is assigned, and we did a tour of the station. We sat and visited, probably for an hour, just chit-chatting about life. And just being there really gave me a whole new respect for the life of firefighters and that sort of thing. And then she got up and she put on her bunker gear. And this bunker gear weighs 70 pounds, put on her helmet, and she picked up this hose like nothing and threw it over her shoulder. And I watched her just go from this ordinary person that I sat at a table with chit-chatting into this really extraordinary woman. And I was so pleased that I was able to capture that, the look on her face and the grit to the gear and everything that surrounded her, the lockers, the piles of gear that are on the top of it, and pretty much just everything about it. But it made me really proud that this was selected and that it hung and hangs in our exhibition and is a tribute somewhat to the not just the female firefighters, but also to the firefighters of Tulsa, the ordinary people that really do extraordinary things for us. And it's just my tribute to that. So thrilled that the picture is there.
Well, I think it's terrific. And I think maybe reason, and you touched on it, that I find it so powerful is that firefighters are these essential workers that put their lives on the line every day, but even more so during the pandemic. They don't know what they're going into. So this really, in so many ways, works. And it's an example of the Tulsa People theme of these very strong, resolute women that you're going to see two more examples of here in just a moment. But I see that we had a question asking where Kathy's from, that this person just loves her accent. You probably tell she's not from Tulsa. Kathy, where are you from?
I grew up in Tewksbury, Massachusetts, and I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1974. So I really consider myself more Okie than Yankee, but apparently when I learned to speak, they did a good job because it stuck.
Well, we love it. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Our next image is also, I think, a very strong, resolute woman. And again, really defines the time this photograph was taken, Anitra. Tell us about Chinta.
Well, First of all, anyone who's in Tulsa, you need to go check out her amazing food truck at 31st and Sheridan. She's out there almost every day of the week, I think. And I have known Chinta for many years. She does some catering as well as having her food truck. And I knew when I got this theme that I wanted to photograph someone who wasn't normally in the limelight. And I think in general, that's a theme for me with my photography. I tend to like to photograph things that are not usually photographed, maybe. You know, I'd be the kind of person that's at some landmark and I'd turn around and take the picture behind me or something. So that's just what I like to do. And Chinta is just a wonderful person. As I said, an amazing cook. And I'd never been inside a food truck either. So when she agreed to be my subject, I found it kind of a fun adventure. And I really wanted to capture the busyness and the hardworking, you know, feeling of what that job would be like. So I had, my initial plan was to try to get like the workers buzzing around her, but there really wasn't enough space to set myself up and the food truck, you know, inside the space. So I did get the blurring action of the other worker, but not the initial plan. So anyway, when I was talking about the photographs being an art of subtraction, there are some things that you don't notice until the end, after you've taken the picture. And I kind of wished later on that I was able to move that trash can in the background, but oh well.
Well, and for those of you that joined us this evening, the first 4 months, the photographers couldn't do what Anitra just suggested, and that's remove anything out of their photograph. They could go from color to black and white, they could enhance the color, those sorts of things, but they couldn't remove a trash can. I think it's great, Anitra. It's what you saw. It's what Chinta deals with in the food truck. And I'll share this. As I mentioned earlier, this has become my favorite theme of the 5. And I think in part because I didn't know the firefighter. I don't know Chinta. But as a result of these photographs, I want to get to know them. Or in the case of our next photograph, someone, if you know her or you know of her, you know that this photograph captures the force of nature that is, Cindy, your subject.
Yes, Mary Beth Babcock. So yeah, I think we've chatted about this. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't love Mary Beth. So when, thinking of Tulsa and thinking of what people represent Tulsa, when Assignment Tulsa people came up, the first person that I thought of was Mary Beth. So of course she was so gracious. And I went to Buck Adams Cosmic Curios. They're on 11th. I think it's 11th and Peoria. So that's Route 66. So Mary Beth is a huge proponent of Route 66. She, they're doing grants to get neon back at the places. So she's just a big champion and for all the businesses, small businesses in Tulsa. So anyway, I went to Buck Adams and we took pictures different places. We took some inside, but of course it was wearing masks, again, sign of the times. But I was like, I really wanted that smile and personality. So I decided, I was like, oh, Mary Beth, what if you're inside and I'm outside? She's like, nobody's ever asked me that before. So I went outside and took this actually through the window, and she was pointing at Buck Adams. And again, she's just so spontaneous. I had a bunch of different, more straightforward smiles, but I just loved this one when she started pointing at Buck, because, her love of Buck. And so Buck is if you've been by there, it's the huge icon, the new icon, I think, Mark, that you called it, the other picture with the mask. 20 foot. It's like the muffler man type statue that she envisioned and brought to Tulsa, I think in 2019, I think.
Yes.
So,
The fall of 2019.
Yeah.
And for any of you that haven't been by that corner of 11th and Peoria, you can't miss him. He'll grab your attention just as Mary Beth does.
Yes.
Thank you, Anitra. I'm sorry. Thank you, Cindy. I'm looking at
You're
Anitra.
welcome.
Thank you, Cindy. And then another one of Bill's work, and I will mention this right now. We had 4 photographers who have 4 of their works in the exhibition, and they're both Gilcrease Museum members, Anitra Lavenhar and Bill Ramsey. And while most of the photographs that were entered, I think, as I said earlier, really show what makes Tulsa special, the essence of Tulsa. This is a photograph that, you know, maybe a lot of people wouldn't have thought to enter in a contest like this, but it does show Tulsa at this time. In fact, I'm sure you could go down in the area this evening and see something similar. But as a photographic enthusiast, maybe I think I'm probably a better curator of photography than I am a photographer, at least I hope so. I look at this photograph that Bill took and notice what he did not leave out. I think a lot of people would have cropped this down to just the man, but if you look in the upper left-hand corner, he leaves something in that really adds another layer or level of power to this image. Up in the upper left-hand corner, no trespassing, no loitering, which I think really makes this a powerful image. And if I didn't mention, the other photographer who had 4 winning entries is Anitra Lavenhar. The theme for November was open. It could be any subject so long as it had something to do with Tulsa broadly defined. And as I just mentioned, Bill Ramsey was one of the 4-time winners. And this was his winning entry, The Iconic Signs of Tulsa Preserved. This is the Stokely Event Center. And Bill shared with me that what you see, the reflection in the floor, well, that's part of Bill's post-processing that if you walked in there, you wouldn't really see so much of. Their floor is shiny. It's not that shiny. So Bill enhanced the image, and that's what was allowed in November. That was not allowed in the previous 4 months. And with that, Dave, I'm going to return to you and obviously Philbrook Museum and Autumn Cascade.
Well, this photo really speaks to the beauty of being part of a community of artisans. As I said, I commonly shoot with a big lens, owls 50 feet away that fill the frame, but I have a friend in the greater Tulsa photography community named Andrew Nichols, who shoots a lot with a wide angle. So when you shoot with a long lens, it compresses everything together. When you shoot with a wide angle, it expands your field of view. So this is very low. My camera is almost getting wet in the little waterfall in the lower gardens. And what I liked about this was the many, many layers and the dimensionality going from the waterfall to the leaves to the limestone and then up into the upper pool and the rock garden and on up to the masterpiece, which is the Villa Philbrook, and then capped off with powder puff white clouds and a Tulsa, Oklahoma beautiful sky. And so this photograph really speaks to me about the growth that something like Photog or some other group of photographers facilitates. And it's been fun for me to sort of see the world differently and to capture it differently than was my propensity as I started out as a photographer. So I enjoyed, I really didn't do a whole lot, anything magic post-processing with this. It just was a pretty November scene at a Tulsa landmark, and so pretty much submitted it the way it was taken at a couple inches away from the water.
Well, and you mentioned all that you see, the leaves coming over the waterfall, the limestone. This photograph has so much texture in it. that it's like you could reach out and scratch the rock with your fingers or put your fingers in the water. In fact, over Memorial Weekend, I went out and I tried to figure out how you took this photograph. And I was going to ask you if you got wet. And you mentioned you had to be careful that your camera didn't.
I've broken cameras before, but this one survived. So,
well, good for more photos to come. Thank you, Dave. And then another one of the Photog members, he's actually the president of Photog right now, also a Gilcrease Museum member. His name is Larry Hall. And this is a great example from November of a photograph having a lot of post-processing. To my eye, this is almost impressionistic, like some of the artwork that we have in the museum. And since Larry's not here, I'm going to ask each of you just to comment on this photograph. Dave, I'll start with you.
Well, I was actually Larry's wingman this night. I had a dog on a leash, so I didn't take any pictures. And I was quite intrigued when I saw what he had done with this gorgeous blue hour evening, capturing from the river parks some of the buildings, the very identifiable buildings of Tulsa. And one of the fun things about Tulsa is anybody who knows Tulsa can tell a picture of downtown Tulsa because there's so many recognizable buildings. So Larry put this through the paces of a number of filters, I believe, using a product called, a product by Topaz, probably called Topaz Labs. But they have a number of tools that photographers can use to improve their images or change them dramatically. So this is really fun, the job that Larry did on this one.
Thank you. And Kathy, any comments you want to make real quick?
Well, I really like this picture too. It's taking something that we see all the time and just making it different. So it makes you look at it twice instead of once. You kind of think, okay, so what's down there in the bottom that's sort of covered up by those scratchy looking trees? But it's still all our iconic buildings that just show right on through. So you know it's Tulsa no matter what he's done to it. And Topaz Studio 2, I believe, is probably the software that he did use. And so the texture is put on the picture as a whole, but then there's some techniques that he would have had to use to brush some of it off, some of the buildings, so it's not quite as heavy, and they still get to shine through. So yeah, he put some effort into this one, and I think he made a really fun, it's a great example of photography art.
Yeah, a great photograph by a great guy. Larry's a terrific guy.
Yes.
Get a chance to meet him. Well, because of our time, I'm going to move on quickly. We're now at a point where I want to answer any questions we have, and it looks like we have some. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go to the Q&A. We have an anonymous question. How did you all get into photography, and how often do you go out to take photos? That's a great question. And so Dave, I'm going to start with you. We'll go to Cindy, then Kathy, and Anitra.
My short answer would be children. But children grow up and you stop taking their pictures and they stop playing sports. And that's when you really discover what your passion is as a photographer. What do you like to take photos of? So that would be my story. So where I've landed now is primarily landscapes and animals in their natural habitat.
Thank you. Cindy?
Oh, and I take photos probably 5 days a week.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, how I got into photography. My dad gave me a camera when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And my dad was into photography. So I think it's one of those things that, you enjoy because your parent does. So it's kind of cute. I have pictures of my cousins where I've posed them, like when we were just little kids, old black and whites, so that was back in the film days. So that's kind of how I got my start. And then I'd say about 7 years ago, I've always taken pictures, but I got more, I was like, I want to learn more. I want to be a better photographer. So I went to TCC and took some of their digital photography classes so that I could get to where I was shooting all manual. So that made a big leap. And I think, like Dave said, I try to shoot with work. It keeps me so busy. It's hard at times, but I try to, and that was the one thing I will say about Assignment Tulsa is it got you out shooting a lot more. It gave you a goal or a target. So I'll always be so thankful to Gilcrease for that opportunity.
Well, that's a great comment, Cindy, and it reminds me of something. I think you actually shared this thought with me, as did other photographers. As we got into the contest, July, August, September, October, November, as people would send me their entries for each month, several of them, and including you, Cindy, said, "Thank goodness for Assignment Tulsa. It got me out of the house, out from in front of the television with all the bad news, and it gave me something to do. It gave me some purpose to my life." So I think that was really important. Kathy, same question.
Well, I probably started with photography at a very young age as well. I received a Brownie, I think it was a Kodak Brownie camera, and it had the round thing and the flash bulb that was in the middle that popped out. And I don't remember all of what I may have done with that, but over the years, it was children taking pictures of my kids, and then my grandchildren. I was fondly nicknamed Grandma Flash. And then they all grew up, and they really didn't have the patience to stand in front of me. And as I said, I've evolved, and so I really am not fond of taking people pictures. My first DSLR I received about 8 years ago, and I initially used it like a point and shoot. It was on automatic all the time. So I decided, okay, we have to do something about this. I took a couple of classes at Apertures, and my big leap in photography really came from joining the Photographers of Tulsa, Oklahoma group. And I also joined an online community called 52 Frames. So as a result of those two entities, my photography has really grown leaps and bounds. I mean, networking and friends and people, YouTube, all of that have really helped what I do today. I am pretty much similar to Dave because I love that 600mm lens too, bird photography, wildlife, and that sort of thing. And then the extreme opposite of that is macro. So I love flower photography and some of the artistic ability that you can put a spin on, similar to what Larry did with textures and that sort of thing. So that's kind of my story.
Anitra, same question.
My love of photography started back in high school with a film camera class, and I just love the magic of watching the picture appear in the darkroom. Didn't love all the technical side of photography, however, and so for a long time I just kind of put it aside. I mean, I always did it, but I didn't pursue it seriously until the iPhone came to be. And all of a sudden I had this high-powered camera in my back pocket where I didn't have to focus on technical stuff, and I could really just focus on composition. I actually really delved into that and did some study in iPhone photography and became more and more well respected in the photography circles. I even taught iPhone photography for a while, but it was about almost 6 years ago now, where I was actually hiking in northern Spain on the Camino de Santiago. I was just about to turn 50, and I was kind of thinking to myself, what am I doing with the rest of my life? I just finished a big job and wasn't sure what to do next. And in reflecting with a friend, it just came up that photography was this love that I'd always wanted to do, but hadn't had the real confidence to pursue it. So after that walk, I convinced myself to go for it. And I did also take classes. I moved gradually away from the iPhone into using a Fuji DSLR camera, which I love, and really growing over time through classes with Doug Henderson at Tulsa Tech, and also just my own studies, lots of online work. In fact, during COVID, I was able to take an amazing photography class with a teacher based in New York and a class of 11 women from all over the world. So that I've really grown through all of that. And certainly Tulsa Photog, I mean, it's amazing the opportunities that they've been able to give as far as taking trips and outings and doing things that I normally wouldn't normally do, like going and photographing the Milky Way. And then I also belong to 52 Frames, and that is really fun because you get like a homework assignment, a theme every week, and that really pushes you to, again, grow as a photographer. So,
Well, thank you. And to our audience, you can see that these folks will talk about photography as long as you will allow it. We've got a few more questions and not a whole lot of time. So this next question, it's a great question. I'm going to ask each of you to answer it in like less than 10 words, and I think you can. What do you consider to be your photographic style? Dave?
Colorful landscape.
2 words. Thank you. Cindy?
Oh gosh, I don't think I have any words. I like all kinds of photography, so I don't know that I have a specific style.
And Cindy was a 3-time winner, and so people and buildings, parts and so forth. So Kathy, same question.
That's a really tough question. I'm not sure if I have a style either. Detail, I would say maybe detail is my favorite part of photography.
Anitra?
I think I veered towards kind of some urban landscape detail as well, and some minimalistic style of photography. As I said before, I like the geometrical line, shape, form, and color as well. So I'm a little bit all over the place because I also do portrait work.
Well, I'm going to also answer that as well as another question. We have a question. Tell us about this photog group, the photographers group at Tulsa, Oklahoma. They have a website, photog.org. Google them up. I became familiar with photog back when we had the Dorothea Lange exhibition, actually the Pulitzer Prize exhibition. Before that, I met some of the photog members who are Gilcrease Museum members, and they suggested that I get with them because I had a love of photography, not as a photographer, but as someone who appreciated photography as fine art. And so if you have any interest at all in photography, consider joining photog. It's $20 a year as a member, of $35 as a family membership. Every time I'm around these people, like tonight, I learn something about photography. As I said, I'm just getting into it. I'm a brand new member of photog. And whether it's an event like tonight or one of their meetings or educational outings, I always learn lots and lots and lots. So I really encourage anybody that's interested in photography, whether you're using something like this, my iPhone, or a $10,000 rig. And I will say that the most important thing is not the camera, it's the person behind the camera looking through the lens. You can take great photographs with a fairly inexpensive camera, including your iPhone. And to answer the question, as a novice photographer, as you can see in my background, I love landscape, and I hope the photographs of landscape I take elicit an emotional response in the viewer and make them want to go into that place and maybe even save it if it's endangered. With that, I think I'm getting messages that I need to wrap this up. So Blake, if you want to bring up our final slide. So with that, we'll end our program. But before we sign off this evening, I want to invite you to join us at 2 upcoming events. This Saturday, June 26th, as long as the weather permits, we will be hosting a community celebration at the museum. The festivities will begin at 11 in the morning and run until 5 in the afternoon. So that's an hour later than we have been open, but until 5 in the afternoon this Saturday. And the day will include live local music, family-friendly art activities, free admission all day to the galleries, and more. Please visit our website for details, particularly if the weather comes up stormy. And then next month, on July 13th, please plan to join us for our next virtual member event, during which Susan Neal will share more information about the museum's new building. Thank you again for joining us. I look forward to seeing you at the museum before we close at 4 o'clock the afternoon of July 4th to begin our new building project. Have a good evening.